We are back, and we are joined once again by friend of the show, Zachary Foster, historian of Palestine, PhD in Near Eastern Studies, and contributor to the Palestine Nexus Newsletter, which everyone should subscribe to. Zach, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Emma.
Of course. So Gaza City is burning. That is not a phrase that I said. It is actually what the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, tweeted out in glee yesterday. The Israeli government announced this ground invasion of the north of Gaza a few weeks ago, but now they are following through on it. By all accounts, this is a new level of horror. The bombing has been absolutely overwhelming, and now prior to the ground invasion, and now it has begun. What are you seeing about what's happening right now in the north of the Gaza Strip?
Israel announced its plans to invade Gaza City for the nth time and has dropped something like 850 bombs, has hit 850 targets in Gaza over the past week. We're talking about 150 bombs a day in an area that has been pulverized, in an area that most analysts are likening to the scenes we saw in Dresden after World War II. That's the area that Israel is continuing to bomb relentlessly. We are seeing hundreds of thousands of Palestinians flee Gaza City on foot, by truck, by car, however they can. Although we're also learning that a majority of Palestinians in Gaza City can't afford to leave.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this siege has many impacts. Obviously, the most deadly one is the forced starvation by the Israeli government. But they're also not allowing things in like fuel. So it's extremely expensive to get a ride anywhere because it's scarce. They're desperate. Tents, I'm reading, are becoming too expensive for folks. So, Israel's bombing the places, the safe zones, right, where they say they're supposed to go. And those are the people that are in tents. And then if a tent gets destroyed and you survive somehow, you can't get a new one because those are too expensive.
Palestine Nexus contributor Rama Hussein just posted the other day, it's going to cost me $2,000 to rent a truck for a few hours to transport her belongings from Gaza City to the south. Who has $2,000 in Gaza? Who has any money in Gaza at all? The economy has been decimated. A tent, like you said, costs upwards of $1,000. Where do you get that money from? People have no way to flee. They have no money to move their belongings. And even if they move south, where are they going to go? 90% of the Gaza Strip is declared an Israeli military zone. And that is to say, it's a kill zone. If you enter it, you're at risk of being shot by a drone, killed by a tank shell, attacked by these armored personnel carriers, these robot bombs. I don't even know what to call them. Israel, over the past couple of weeks, is now embracing new military technology, as far as we can tell, where they're putting explosive devices inside these armored personnel carriers that are going around Gaza City and blowing up entire city blocks. This is in addition to the mass destruction of every remaining tower in Gaza. Over the past week, Bibi Netanyahu bragged about bringing down something like 50 towers left in Gaza. The Israeli army isn't even going after Hamas anymore. They don't even claim to. They're claiming to completely eradicate all physical infrastructure, flatten Gaza, nowhere to live, nowhere to sleep, no shelter, no homes, no schools, no roads, no water infrastructure, no cemeteries, no mosques, no churches, nothing. Just scorched earth. That's what Israel's doing in Gaza. It's what it did in Rafah. It's what it's doing in Khan Yunis. It's what it already did in Beit Lahia in the north and Jabalia. Israel's plan is to flatten the entirety of the strip, make it completely unlivable, so that over the course of the next year or two, Palestinians will continue to move south, at which point they will be forced to leave Gaza because Gaza is unlivable. And that's what Israel's plan is.
Can we put up this map here? This was from the UN report, which, as we headlined yesterday, the UN Commission officially said Israel has committed genocide. I find the past tense a little bit troubling, given the fact that it's ongoing. Also, the figures that they're using, we should say, the current population being 2.1 million. I still go back to Trump months ago saying 1.7 to 1.8 million are left. That would make sense given the fact that hundreds of thousands actually are dead. But this is the evacuation order here. And you can see for the podcast audience, basically the white is supposed to be the safe zone in the south. But scroll up slightly here, Matt. You can see the north of Gaza and Gaza City up there. You would have to pass through the purple zone, which is a kill zone, the militarized zone, that for that ethnic cleansing to happen. So even if they're the folks that are able to abide by the order to leave their home, are very much at risk of just being bombed or shot because there's no way to move to the area they're asking them to move without being in the militarized kill zone.
An IDF source claimed that for about 48 hours, they would allow Palestinians access to a single access road that in which they would be able to move from the north to the south. At the same time that Israel has shut off internet in the north. We just received reports just a few hours ago that the Israeli army has shut off internet. Now, let me ask you this, Emma. How am I supposed to know which roads I'm allowed to travel on if I can't access the internet? I mean, it's a death march is what it is. Not just because you have 1 million people living in Gaza City, many of whom have, forgetting about having the funds to move, you have people, tens of thousands of people, sick, diseased, injured, elderly people, small children. How are all these people supposed to move in 48 hours? It's a death march, the same march that Armenians were sent on in World War I, the same march that millions of Jews were sent on in World War II, is exactly the same march that millions of Palestinians are now being sent on. It's a death march.
And what are you hearing about those Palestinian men that last week there were images of them being basically lined up and shuttled to God knows where? We still have very little information about what happened. Where did that occur, Zach? I'm sorry if I blanked on it.
Last week, the Israeli army rounded up something like 1,500 Palestinian men in the West Bank city, the occupied city of Tulkarm, which is in the West Bank, about an hour and a half west of Ramallah or Nablus. And it's an hour and a half, right, because of the 18 checkpoints you have to pass through. I mean, it's a 20-minute drive. But what we saw was thousands of Palestinian men. And a source in Tulkarm shared with me that the Israeli army just literally went door to door. They just walked into shops, they walked into restaurants, they walked into homes, grabbing every Palestinian man that they could find. And what does that remind you of, Emma? I'll tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the scenes after the Nazi army invaded Poland and occupied Poland in 1939, rounding up Jewish families, lining them up in single file lines, shipping them off to ghettos, shipping them off to concentration camps, which is exactly where those Palestinian men are going. Where are they going? They're winding up in Israel's torture dungeons, where over the past 2 years, 60 Palestinian men and women have been murdered. They've been tortured to death. They've been starved to death. You have cases of Palestinian men being raped inside Israeli
we have video
torture dungeons.
I mean that video that we can't play here, but if people want to see it, and there are a lot of things we have to bear witness to, it's our responsibility, but you can choose, of course, what to protect yourself from. But there is a video of a bunch of IDF soldiers putting up their shields, thinking that they were protecting it from the camera, but you can see obviously what's happening. They're raping, one of the IDF soldiers is raping a prisoner.
We are witnessing the West Bank turn into Gaza in slow motion. It's happening slowly, but everything we've seen in Gaza over the past years is now happening in the West Bank. We're talking about 40,000 plus Palestinians ethnically cleansed from the Tulkarm, Nur Shams, and Jenin refugee camps. They were woken up in the middle of the night, forced to leave their homes for having committed the crime of being expelled from their homes in 1948. That's why they're in refugee camps in the West Bank. And so we're seeing mass ethnic cleansing happening. We're seeing mass arrests happening. We're seeing mass killings happening. We're seeing the murder of journalists. We're seeing the confiscation of land. We're seeing the expansion of the Israeli settlement enterprise. Just this past week, Bezalel Smotrich is announcing plans to build something like 3,500 new housing units in the E1 zone, that famous zone that the European Union and the United States said was a red line for the past 30 years, that if you build in the E1 zone, you would effectively be dissecting the West Bank into two sections, thereby rendering a contiguous Palestinian state in the West Bank effectively impossible. I mean, it's been impossible for a long time, but this is a final nail in that coffin. And that's what they just announced last week.
What do you make of this turn to the West Bank in that way, their attempts to make it into Gaza? I mean, they want to just be openly bombing. They're bombing the West Bank right now in the way that they were mowing the lawn in Gaza prior to October 7th, you know. So it's an escalation, obviously. But the fact that they're escalating beyond settler tactics there means, I mean, there's just nothing left to bomb in Gaza. They're bombing rubble, and it seems like their campaign of mass starvation, you know, might be a little bit just more efficient for them, and no one's stopping them.
No one is stopping the mass starvation campaign. Every day, the Gaza Health Ministry reports 4, 5, 10 Palestinians dying from malnutrition, being starved to death. And that's because Israel controls every entry and exit point in the Gaza Strip and decides exactly how much food enters the Gaza Strip. We had 2 weeks ago, the UN declared a famine in the north of Gaza.
And you talk about historical examples, Zach. I mean, it's the Warsaw Ghetto.
It's unconscionable that the world is allowing the Israeli government to starve to death 2 million people. We have reports every day. I mean, if you just open Twitter, open Instagram, open TikTok, every single day I receive a half dozen messages from Palestinians saying, I'm starving to death. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Right. I haven't eaten anything but moldy bread in 3 weeks. These are the reports we're seeing. Israel has destroyed all the agricultural, 98% of the agricultural land in Gaza has been destroyed, so you can't grow anything in Gaza anymore. So that means that all the food that Palestinians have access to in the Gaza Strip right now is food that has made it into the Gaza Strip via one of 3 or 4 Israeli-controlled checkpoints, where Palestinians are then forced to travel 10, 15 kilometers to these aid sites, these GHF aid sites, where every day to this day, they're being slaughtered every day. The Gaza Health Ministry reports however many Palestinians have been starved to death in the past 24 hours. Now they're also breaking down how many Palestinians were murdered trying to collect a box of aid, trying to collect some meager food rations. By the way, those boxes, those GHF boxes of aid include things like pasta. Well, you need water to cook pasta, and there's no fresh water in Gaza. Right. So they're being given boxes of fake food that they can't even eat. And then you have the Israeli military aid sites, such as in the north of Gaza, where GHF doesn't operate because Israel is trying to push all Palestinians to the south. But there's the Zikim aid point in the north, where it's the same story as the GHF sites. Every day, 5, 10, 15 Palestinians are slaughtered to death trying to grab a bag of flour. That's what Israel's doing. It's a slow, grinding starvation. It's a grinding genocide where Israel can kill 100 Palestinians a day without the world caring. And that was I'm quoting Israeli officials when I say that.
They are acting with a level of impunity that is a direct result of U.S. Complicity, Western complicity. We do know now that the EU is finally talking about sanctions, finally. And it's far too late. But what do you make of that shift in terms of like France recognizing Palestine as a state, Canada doing the same? I know it's symbolic, but these are kind of diplomatic pressure points that I'm hoping at the very least has some sort of effect.
Well, the declaration by France and Canada and others calling for the establishment or recognizing the establishment of a Palestinian state is about as important as the ICJ case brought before Israel in January 2024, in which the ICJ declared that there's a risk of genocide, thus requiring all member states of the UN, who are all party to the Genocide Prevention Convention of 1948, they're all required to take action, not issue condemnations, but take action. Right. And no one's taking action, and that's the fundamental problem with all of these declarations. I don't care what you say. Palestinians can't eat your words. They need food. They need water. They need medicine. They need shelter. They need an end to the aerial bombardment. And issuing strongly worded statements condemning Israeli aggression in Qatar, condemning Israeli aggression in Tunisia, condemning Israeli aggression in Iran and Lebanon and Syria and the West Bank and Gaza, and now in Israel proper, where in the past 24 hours, the Israeli government has ethnically cleansed a few dozen Palestinians from Israel proper,
right?
A Palestinian Bedouin village in the south. So Israel is carrying out atrocities quite literally wherever it can. And strongly worded statements do nothing to stop those acts of aggression. We need action, not words.
Well, you mentioned how many countries Israel has bombed, and I mean they're just, if these were European countries with Renaissance architecture, the white people would be like losing their minds if this were the case. But these are Muslim countries, Arab countries, Iran, obviously Persian, but they bombed Iran, they bombed Syria. They bombed Tunisia, of course, as you mentioned, striking that aid ship at port. Yemen, Qatar, Lebanon, and of course Palestine. Like this is Nazi Germany stuff. I mean, they are fighting a major expansionist regional war, but you can't get white Westerners to care. I don't know what else there is to say.
In the waning years of apartheid, South Africa's rule in South Africa, that regime went on a killing spree all across the region. Yeah. Zimbabwe, Botswana, what was then Rhodesia, all of these countries, because you had African national leaders, resistance leaders taking shelter in these places. It was a quite similar story where it just went on a bombing campaign, an invasion campaign, a killing campaign everywhere. And it represents the last gasp of empire, the last gasp of when you lose the ability to maintain control via peaceful means, you pursue violent means. And you see the same thing happening with the U.S. empire as well, in which we're bombing Iran, we're bombing Yemen, we're bombing boats thousands of miles away off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia. It's this inability to solve your problems through diplomacy, through peaceful means, you resort to violence. And that's exactly what Israel's doing, and it's just completely, it's a rogue state, right? There's no restraints anymore, no even pretense of restraints. Right? It used to be that when Israel carried out these attacks in other countries, they would feign ignorance. What?
They're defending themselves. Yeah.
Right. And now they're owning up to it. They're embracing it. We attacked Hamas in Qatar. We bombed the United States' closest ally in the Middle East, aside from Israel. And they're owning up to it.
Well, we have a president that's allowing that. And, it's amazing, lastly here, Zach, to see Trump do the dance that Biden did about how mad he is. And Biden prided himself on his, foreign policy, but in part, it's like Trump doesn't have, it doesn't flatter his ego, and he doesn't have the attention span. So he'll be pissed off too, but not change anything, obviously. And he also got that major campaign donation where he wants Israel to be able to do what it wants, just wrap it up by the end of the year, is what he's saying.
Trump has never been a person interested in details. He likes headlines. He likes accolades. He likes praise. He clearly, I think, doesn't think all that much of Netanyahu, while at the same time is probably also scared of Netanyahu, He understands Netanyahu's reach in the United States, the power that Israel has to murder, assassinate, invade, occupy, kill whoever it wants. And I think Trump is probably a little bit afraid of Netanyahu.
Who knows what Netanyahu has on him if we're going to go full tinfoil hat on who might have been an Israeli intelligence asset?
Max Blumenthal reported at the Gray Zone, was it last week, that Israeli officials inside the White House, that he has a source who told him Israeli officials planted spying devices, listening devices on the White House lawn during Netanyahu's most recent visit. We know as well that the Israeli government has a long history of planting spying devices inside the personal residences of other heads of state, including in the United Kingdom and including in the United States.
Bill Clinton, the Israeli government knew, I believe, about the Monica Lewinsky affair fairly before that broke to the public too. How did that happen? Yeah.
So this is a country that has a long history of spying on its friends, spying on its allies, including and especially the United States and the UK. It's a country that has no shame whatsoever in blackmailing whoever it wants, including UN official Richard Goldstone, who was the lead author of the Goldstone Report, which described Israel's 2008-2009 invasion in Gaza. He described the goal of that operation, whose aim was to terrorize the civilian population of Gaza. Those are his words. And that was the goal of the operation. They blackmailed him. He recanted the report, although his staff did not. So Israel has a long, long history of blackmail, of bribery. Obviously, we know what happened to Karim Khan after he issued the arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. They blackmailed, certainly tried to blackmail Karim Khan, who recently, I believe, resigned, perhaps owing to that blackmail. This is just a long-standing practice of the Israeli government for decades. You could almost say it's part of the DNA of Israel. It blackmails Palestinians. It blackmails Israelis. It blackmails heads of state around the world. There is no one that is off limits to the state of Israel, not even the U.S. president himself.
Well, Zach, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, everyone. Check out Palestine Nexus Newsletter, essential source in these times. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.